I bet you didn't know that the Hangover films are secretly deep films about male psychology. Maybe the director of The Joker's been trying to warn us about the male loneliness epidemic for decades. Stu, Phil, and Alan working as representations for the id, the ego, and the superego. It's day 58 of 365, today's movie, The Hangover. This one's directed by Todd Phillips and stars Zach Galifianakis, Bradley Cooper, and Ed Helms as the three best friends and the three worst dudes that you've ever seen. For me, the only way I can watch these films is through the lens that I brought up before on this show, where I look at things through the It's Always Sunny lens. It's okay for us to make media about the worst people you know, doing and saying the worst things that you've ever heard, as long as the film is willing to frame it as such. They have to learn a lesson, or at least the audience has to be made clear to a lesson that they weren't supposed to do these things. I think that's important to bring up here because otherwise I could just spend this whole review listing the offensive shit in this movie. It is offensive from beginning to end. There's shit in the trailers that to this day I would not repeat, not in 2025 TikTok. Instead of being gleeful with the nastiness, I want to bag all of that so that I can instead talk about some of the genuinely creative work in this movie. I understand why The Hangover got 2 sequels. It's because they have a really, really cool joke and comedy structure that we just don't see in movies anymore. You'd be very hard-pressed to find something that has a rising and falling action with a twist that happens so consistently that you learn the language of the comedy by the 3rd or 4th bit. So much so that later in the movie, when we get to the impound lot with the Mercedes, it is inverting that and taking our expectations and turning them on their heads to reveal something good finally happening in the movie. I love somebody that understands joke structure in this way, and it's interesting to me that it's Todd Phillips doing all this. It's not so much the content I find frustrating now, it's the reactions from them in their sober minds that I find so frustrating, and that's what pushes the movie further. Their pursuit of Doug actually shows us that this is what we were expected to believe a normal crew of guys was like in 2009. Don't tell me that you think the male loneliness epidemic came out of nowhere. This is the seeds in its inception. Maybe you either die a drunken hero or live long enough to become a sober villain in the case of Hangover to the Joker. As a teen, I was giddy to go see this in the theaters. It was about a week before my 19th birthday, and I felt like I was getting away with murder going to see this movie with so much offensive, crazy, borderline pornographic shit in it. I was cheesing ear to ear by the time the credits are ready to roll. And then that slideshow, it was over for me. It was over for me. It was locked in as one of my favorite comedies ever. As an adult, I don't revisit it that often. I was actually not looking forward to it when I saw it come up in the list. And now with this new lens, I'm actually excited to look at 2 and 3 and see if they stick this landing and make a trilogy about male loneliness, about the pre-incel movement, about toxic masculinity, and where this stuff comes from in our society, the performance of masculinity and the mask that we wear in society. That being said, upon my recent rewatch, I'd love to talk to you about my 3 favorite things that I saw this time. The first thing I love about this movie is Alan and Phil. Their friendship blossoming in the desert gives me so much joy to this day. And I think when I watch the movie as an adult, I'm able to figure out Phil's status in life prevents him from acting out in the ways that he wants to. He's a boy at heart, pretending to be a man in our world. Contrast that with Alan, someone that's presented as a man in our world who is at heart and on face just a boy. They even say it a couple times, ignore the beard, he's just a child. I love that, and I love the way that their interplay brings that out from each other. As we see in the slideshow later, Phil actually ends up acting the most childishly across the night, and I think that's because of his time around Alan. Across the next day, as they get to know each other, their friendship blossoms. Phil sees the authentic person in Alan that he wishes he could be. And he loves that Alan sees him as cool. These are representations of himself that he's added to his personality over the years in an effort to get people to feel that way about him. But he actually is connecting with Alan over their childishness, the little quips, the little sayings, the little things that he would also think but would never say out loud lest he be judged as being not cool. I love this friendship, and it's something that The two of them showing themselves off as really excellent actors shines through here. The second thing I love, Mike motherfucking Tyson. Now, I am a little biased on this front. Tyson and I share a birthday, June 30. June 30 is the very last day of June cancers, and if you know astrology at all, July cancers are a different type. We're this close to being that, and I think his role in this movie is bigger than just a celebrity cameo. So we introduce him in the middle of the movie as himself. This grounds the movie in our real world. He's not playing a character, he is playing himself. He's a warrior and he's soft-hearted. That's something that is true about his personality, and they decide to play up in the movie. The tiger then becomes a metaphor. It's just a big cat, as we see the night before, that when the boys aren't scared of him, he actually gets along well with the group. It's when they've applied their masks the next day again that the tiger doesn't recognize them anymore and now doesn't like them anymore. I love that because as a representation for Tyson and as a representation for masculinity, this is kind of how men act. You can get them to put their guard down and be sweet and loving and even soft, but you actually have to roofie them or drug them to get them into that state, because otherwise they're just ferocious man-eaters. What was used as all of the trailer bait and poster stuff to get you wondering, what did these guys get up to that night, becomes a deeper metaphor within the movie that isn't just there to shock, it's actually there as a message. The third thing I love is the performance of masculinity. This movie's a time capsule for how white masculinity was meant to be performed at the time. Cowtail to the coolest in the group, present yourself as cooler than you actually are, and don't you dare be authentic or autistic. That's not cool at all. Even Doug not being around for most of the movie is a statement about how to avoid this. You literally have to fuck off away from it to avoid being sucked into the mire. Otherwise, you might yourself fall victim to it. Stu is masquerading as a doctor. He has to present himself cooler than he actually is. He's emasculated by his own choices. He has to peacock around in a presentation of what is not truly there. And his truest self is his happier self. Pulling out his own tooth in an act of masculinity is something he can be tricked into because it's so fake on him. But his actual loving self comes out when he meets a stripper. He has to lean into his dirtier self to even find that true happiness. Then we have Phil, a guy that presents himself as a father and as a leader, but as we find out is the one that leads to most of the bad choices across the night as he acts out in his more childish, deeper nature. He's a schoolyard scallywag taking money from kids to be able to bet it in Las Vegas. And it's because he's a teacher. He doesn't see himself as fully a man. He feels emasculated by his own job. Alan ends up being the most authentic of the group, and his only folly ends up being trusting in people more than they deserve. He allows people to show up as themselves and takes that as their authenticity, not recognizing that everyone around him is putting on a mask. Together, the three of them work as the id, the ego, and the superego. When they're in harmony, drunken together, letting their real selves out, everything works out. We get examples of this later on in the movie when they return to the casino, allowing their deeper selves out again through drinks, and we get another taste of what they look like when they're working in harmony. Disharmony appears when they aren't being their authentic selves, and they start to fall apart as a group, incapable of figuring out a very easy mystery. This disharmony actually adds up in them doing more damage sober than they ever did drunk. This ends up making the plot of the movie follow the old saying, drunk actions are sober thoughts. So what do you think? Have I read too deeply into The Hangover, or did I unlock something deeper that you'd never seen before? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Our next movie is a comedy of biblical proportions. We're talking about Year One, and I'll see you tomorrow.